This is Jacksons.TV with Israel Martinez, better known as Izzy. Izzy, can you start by giving us some background on you? How did you start in wrestling?
You know, my father wrestled growing up, so I started wrestling when I was 9 years old, along with my brother. He was 11. I'm originally from Aurora, Illinois. I grew up wrestling in Illinois and competing all over the country. I was a pretty good wrestler growing up, and won a couple state titles in the kids program, a couple state titles in the high school program, and then I won a junior college national title at North Idaho. I got recruited to go to the University of Iowa. It didn't really work out there, so I came home and started coaching. And I'm actually the head wrestling coach at Montini Catholic High School. We won our 5th state title in a row in Illinois. And I also own Izzy Style Wrestling, which is a private wrestling school in the suburbs of Chicago and Schaumburg, Illinois.
And what is Izzy Style Wrestling?
You know, it's kind of funny because most people like to describe something as a certain style. This has to be done this way. This has to be done that way. And we started Izzy Style 7 years ago, just basically putting all styles together, and just we call it Izzy Style because it doesn't matter how you wrestle. Our goal is to bring guys in and just to continue to do what they do well and get them better and improve all their weaknesses.
And how did you actually start, training MMA athletes?
It was kind of crazy. I've known Guida for a long time, since we were little. We weren't that good of friends because he's just from about an hour north of where I live. I was wrestling at Harper College. I was working out there doing some wrestling, and Clay walked in, and we just started wrestling around, and he just said, hey, I need some help with my wrestling. So we built a friendship together. I started training Clay in Chicago for a couple years, and then when he got the invitation to come down to Jackson's, or basically when he invited himself and called Greg and got here, I came with him. So I showed up here with me and Clay, drove his RV 22 hours all the way down from Chicago, and we showed up here at Jackson's, and it's been about 2.5, almost 3 years ago.
And what is your, what are your thoughts, or how do you incorporate wrestling into MMA?
My goal with the guys is just so they can understand wrestling, understand hip position, understand head position, elbow position, and just the goal with most of the guys is to improve their technique so they're more comfortable, and once they're more comfortable, obviously they'll start learning to get better, and once they stop some takedowns, they'll start understanding, hey, if I can stop them, I can do it, and they'll start learning takedowns themselves.
And how does there's so many great wrestlers, of course, in the UFC and Strikeforce and other promotions. But how do you see wrestling fitting specifically into MMA? I mean, what kind of style? I mean, freestyle, Greco. How do you see it actually incorporated into MMA?
It's kind of crazy. I was a wrestling coach, in Chicago, obviously. I came down with Guida, and I was just working out with Clay. And it was just my mind 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago when we got here, was very one-dimensional. It was, let's just teach him how to double A this guy and hold him down. And it's the evolution of me as a coach has come a long way. But I think, I think Greco-Roman wrestling is probably the best fit because you're more upright rather than in freestyle wrestling where you're in such a lower stance, and I think that's why the Greco-Roman wrestlers are so successful in the sport of wrestling. How do I think wrestling is in Strikeforce and UFC, and I think in MMA in general? I think if you can't stop a takedown, you're in big trouble.
And how about with ground control? Like when you actually go here at the gym with some elite wrestlers, they use those hips and they get really heavy on you, and how can you describe how wrestling is used, in the actual ground game?
It's unbelievable, the dominance of just position, and that's what high school wrestling is, and that's what collegiate wrestling is, that's what elementary school wrestling is. You get on top of a guy, you don't let him up. You do whatever it takes to control him, and you stay on your advantage, and you continue to dominate, continue to wear him down with your weight, continue to keep him flat on the mat, and just keep punishing him. And I think that it's huge in wrestling, in MMA, because most of the guys, they like to just let the guys up and let them gain different positions, but if you notice the wrestlers, they just smother guys, and I think that's probably the biggest the biggest factor in wrestling and MMA is just when you get on top of guys on the ground, it's a little easier to ground and pound them because you're used to using your hips, your legs, your arms, and you're used to moving with one arm, and it's just it's an easy adapt. It's easy to adapt if you're a wrestler.
And the classic, argument always goes, wrestling against jiu-jitsu. What are your thoughts about that type of style matchup?
It's funny because I learn a lot down here at Jackson's, coaching here. I haven't rolled with too many great jiu-jitsu players in Chicago. I know they're out there. I just haven't seen them. Down here we got a couple black belts here, and wrestling with them on the ground with me, it's just very fun. I learn a lot. I think in a real fight game, it's about control and tenacity, and I think a lot of times is if the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player is meaner and tougher and just a little slicker, they're gonna win. But if the wrestler, they say, if they start getting on top of pounding them, that usually brings them down a belt.
Here at Jackson's, you also train a lot of different fighters. Jon Jones, Guida. See you working with so many elite athletes here. What is it like working with these elite athletes here at Jackson's Winkeljohn?
I'm blessed. I really, there's no other way to describe it. It's just a wonderful opportunity. Greg Jackson opened the doors to me when I came in and said, hey, we'd like to have you coach here and help the guys. And it started with Guida, and then I started helping Kyle Noak, Brian Stann, Tom Watson, and then, I just help all the guys out, Cub Swanson, Isaac Valley, Flag. If I missed some guys, sorry. And, obviously I helped the champ, Jon Jones. But it's just a privilege and an honor. These guys are so talented, but like I tell a lot of people, there's talented people walking on the streets every day. These guys here put in the time and the work, and it's a wonderful opportunity because the discipline and the structure and the philosophy here is very simple. Work your butt off, learn a lot, and dominate the guys, and that's how my wrestling team is in Chicago. So it's a pretty good change of pace because I get to learn a lot. In wrestling, I'm learning, but it's tough sometimes because I've wrestled so long. Here, I'm just a new breed of guys that I come to jiu-jitsu class and watch, and I learn 10 things a day. I come to striking and watch, the Jedi, Coach Winkeljohn, and he's just awesome. He's so technically sound, and it's to watch him is just amazing too. So just to work with the fighters is one thing, but to work with the coaches, Greg Jackson, he's awesome, and Coach Mike Valley is another Muay Thai coach. They're awesome. Brandon Gibson, they're awesome. So it's great to be surrounded by other great coaches, and then to also have the opportunity to work with them to get some of these guys better. And the goal here for me is, and the only reason I'm down here is to get these wrestlers, the guys to be wrestlers, and the wrestlers that are wrestlers to get better, and the guys that aren't wrestlers to at least believe they're wrestlers just a little.
Now, besides your club, that you coach at and your school, do you also do seminars as well?
Yes, I do seminars all over the state. Sometimes I go with Guida a lot, and now they're calling me from everywhere. Now that I was hidden down here for about a year or so. Not too many people knew I was down here. I didn't have Twitter, and no one really posted it. But now a lot of people know I'm down here, so they're all kind of requesting me to go do seminars everywhere. So it's easy. I love doing them, but I'm a Jackson's guy, and I usually just don't try to go to other gyms. I help the guys at Jackson's, and I'm loyal to the Jackson team.
And who, you mentioned the coaches and stuff. Is there anyone else you would like to acknowledge or thank?
I'd like to thank Guida, without my best friend, and, just my obviously he's a student of mine. I'd like to thank Jon Jones. He's the best fighter in the world. He's dominant, and he believes in me, and he supports me, he supports my club, and not only that, Tom Watson, just all the guys, and, Brian Stann I've learned so much from Brian Stann, just about being a good person. It's just great. Coach Greg, everybody, Albuquerque, I got a second home and a second family.
Okay, we really appreciate you taking time out, and I would like to catch up with you every time you're in town.
One thing I gotta say is there's women's fighters down here, and I love those girls too. I have a great time with them, and I don't want to do an interview without saying Michelle and Julie and Noemi and just all the girls and Jody. It's just a privilege, and no worries. Anytime you want to interview, just give me a call.
Okay, thanks again, and good luck with Jon's fight.